James, and it's been a good while since I've done a Twilight 2000 retroactive review, so I thought let's do another. And I thought I'd do something which you don't see very often. It wasn't particularly big. This, the NATO Vehicle Guide, which was published for first edition. So, written by Frank Frey. That's always off to a good start. It was done as part of the Return to Europe series. It was actually coded 0526, which there isn't a list on there unfortunately, was one of the last items for the first edition. So it's got a really nice evocative cover. We've got a German tank crewman, we've got a Leopard 2, and we've got the Saxon APC. Yeah, nice enough little cover. So we go inside and we get the usual contents list. So starting off, we've got a page of extra background which puts the emphasis onto NATO, and it says that it deals with Canada, Denmark, Federal Republic of Germany, Netherlands, Norway, Turkey and the United Kingdom. Yeah, it's the countries who are more active in the game. I do spot a real oddity though. We've got the Turks, but not the Greeks who they're fighting. That seems an odd omission. We've got the usual little line diagrams and the usual first edition style artwork, both of which are really good. So we start off by looking at the Danes. It gives you the order of battle as of the 1st of July 2000. So we have that there. Unit histories. And then authorised level of equipment, and it does note as ever that these are what they were authorised, not what they actually have. And you've got a breakdown for an armoured battalion, a mechanised infantry battalion, a motorised infantry battalion and an artillery battalion. So good mix. I'm not enough of an expert on the Danes to look at that, but it does always surprise me that we don't drop below company level, because there's not many companies left in Twilight 2000. It would have made more sense, and to actually give an idea as well as to what troops there were, but I suppose this is concentrating on the vehicles. So we've got the Canadians. So the Canadian gives the order of battle. Only two units are then given histories, the 1st Infantry Brigade and the 4th Mechanised Brigade. It doesn't mention the reserve troops there, I do notice that. There's also, I spotted a mistake for the mechanised equipment list, in that it lists Bradleys in the headquarters. I assume that's actually just a mistake and something that was missed. You've then got the West Germans. This is probably the largest section. Gives full details, you know, to the same level that we got in the American guides and the Soviet guides. I did note, particularly of interest, was the 211th Panzer Grenadier Division, which was originally the 11th Motorised Rifle Division of the East German Army. So that was incorporated. That was a nice touch from the background. Again, you get the equipment list with some very useful ones in there, particularly the Panzer Recon Battalion. I think that would be a fascinating little force to make up. You've got the Netherlands, and this is where we started learning a bit more details about what's going on in the Dead Zone. We had a bit more detail of that. Quite a bit of detail on the Dutch, which is a bit of a surprise because a lot of it is back in Holland. You had the Norwegians, a few pages on them. The colour plates, which I always love, they were straight out of like an Osprey. Some nice examples as well. You've got things like illustrations of Leopards 1 and 2, Challengers. There's no Challenger 2s because this was before the Challenger 2 was even announced. Chieftains, Vickers Mark 7. All the things you expect: Gepards, Rapiers, M60s, Marder. Now there was an interesting bit with the Marder. They're listed as Marder 2s with 25mm cannon. Well, the Marder 2 was, okay, admittedly it was post-game, was a completely separate vehicle. But what it does have on the Marder 2 illustration is it has the remote controlled machine gun at the rear. That was only ever fitted to prototype Marder 1s and wasn't used for very long. So there was a little bit of a mistake there. It's not exactly a huge mistake. I'm enough of a tank geek to spot that, but there's not many people who are. So for the vehicles, and there's so look, 8 pages of colour illustrations with 4 or 5 vehicles on each, 6 on that one. You've got a brief paragraph writing it up. We've then got the Turkish army. Surprisingly, huge amounts of detail in there. That list actually goes to 4 pages, so there's a lot there. We then get the British army. Yeah, this is where I have problems. It's followed the Survivor's Guide to the UK, which means it's missed out completely the entire reserve component, the entire territorial army as was then. It has some issues. First Royal Marine Brigade, well that should be the a Commando Brigade, not Royal Marine Brigade. You've got little things like that are wrong with it. This is where I know the equipment a bit better. So you have the Armoured Regiment, and in brackets battalion, because British regiments are battalion size. It doesn't differentiate between the different types of armoured squadron and armoured battalion. So there are issues with that. It's given the age and given the access to information when this was done, it's not that surprising. You then go on to equipment descriptions. So you've got a good variety of trucks. You've got Land Rovers in there. Probably could have done with a bit notes on the variants, but you get odd things like the M151 Jeep, armoured personnel carriers. There's quite a good mix there. The Marder, for example, though, is where you get issues where it doesn't differentiate between the Marder A1, A2, A3 and so on. You just get one lump for all of them. The British kit, which is the one I tend to know more of, is actually fairly good. I think there's nothing particularly wrong with the British kit. Again, possibly a little bit more detail. There are some nice additions. I particularly like the TH301, which was originally designed as the TAM for the Argentinians, and the idea there is they actually use it in the game as something the German government buys for the reconnaissance units. I like that. There were some nice extrapolations. We have to remember that the difficulty with this is it's written in, copyrighted in 1989, so we're published in 1989, before even the first Gulf War, and yet we're trying to extrapolate what's going on in 1995. So as an alternative history, it's pretty good. You've got plenty of sort of other vehicles. You've got lots of light vehicles, which I thought was good. We've got engineering vehicles, main battle tanks. We've got everything from the fictional Leopard 3 with the remote turret. We've got the Challenger, the Chieftain, and again it would have been nice to have had different marks of the Chieftain, so we could pick up things with Stillbrew armour and when it was fitted with the TOG's thermal sight. Through to the M48A5, which is obviously still being used by some countries at that point. So yeah, that was nice. Self-propelled artillery, plenty in there, and some really good vehicles for use with PCs. The Weasel, for example, is a great one to give a small group. So again, a couple of things like the Sabre, which never actually made it into service, and then you've got the charts for the different vehicles. Obviously in first edition there were a lot of There's a lot of detail. The charts there, having looked at them, they seem pretty reasonable. You've got some additions then to the price list for things that weren't actually in the original game. So you have things like the Swingfire, Rapier, Roland. Obviously there are quite a few different weapons that have been added, like the 76mm on the Scorpion, 30mm cannon for the Raden. So you've got things like that, and they don't seem completely unreasonable. And then at the end you've got some selected divisional and non-divisional unit makeup, so basically regiments, brigades and divisions for Norway, the Netherlands, Turkey and Germany. There's not one for Britain because that was already covered in the Survivor's Guide to the UK. And they do show you how many of each type of battalion you would expect to find in each unit. So overall, it's a product of its time. There were some nice things that I actually, in all fairness, did carry on into 2nd edition, even when the game didn't, like the TH301. I thought that was a really nice little thing to include. If you're playing 1st edition, it's really, really useful. If you're playing anything later, it's far less useful, because this was all then built up, and when they brought out a 2nd edition NATO Vehicle Guide, it was all updated, although the illustrations went across exactly the same, including where this led to a few issues where things had been changed in name or had been dropped, and they still appear in the colour plates. But for the time, a pretty good game. Odd little mistake in it. I mean, I paid $4.99 for this. To be honest, I think it's worth that for the illustrations, because the illustrations have some lovely little touches. That they are written as in game world. So I'll pick one completely at random. Here we go. Plate B1. Chieftain, Brigade Headquarters, 2nd Armoured Brigade, Iranian People's Army, 3rd Armoured Division, Kazan, Iran in July 2000. British aid to the Iran No-Win took the form of military equipment and monetary aid, as well as troops to serve as training cadres for the Iranian People's Army. The Chieftain tank illustrated here shows a colour scheme typical of the bulk of the vehicles in Iranian service. Sand overall with large red-brown patches. The storage racks on the vehicle show the typical hodgepodge collection of personal gear and survival necessities. The 2 odd burn marks on the front and rear left fender may represent non-penetrating hits from a small caliber incendiary or smoke weapon. So it's written very much in game world, and I have to be honest, when I've written a lot of stuff, that inspired me to do very similar sort of things. So hopefully you found that useful. Let me know in the comments. And if there's enough interest, we'll go back and we'll do some more of these. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click on the like button below so that I know what people like and I know what to make more of. Alternatively, if you've enjoyed it and think you'd like to see more, please click on the subscribe button. That way you get notified by YouTube whenever I bring out a new video. And you never know, there might be something in there that you hadn't considered, because I do cover a variety of things on the channel. And finally, if you have a little bit of cash going, I now have a Patreon account. I'm always looking for patrons, because at the end of the day, let's be perfectly honest, it's a good way for me to get a little bit of money that will use to buy review items or to travel to museums and so on. I don't put a huge amount on that. At the minute, all we've got is one tier charging £1 a month, which just, as I said, helps cover my costs. See you soon.